Hello and welcome to the very first episode of ProShip ParcelCast, a podcast where we talk about all things parcel shipping. I'm Justin Cramer, head of sales and co-founder of ProShip, multi-carrier shipping software deployment. I've designed over 300 different solutions with some of them involving 4 continents, and some of my customers shipping more than 1 million packages a day. With me is Clint. Clint is a senior sales engineer at ProShip, where he leverages his expertise to show shippers how to integrate multi-carrier shipping solutions and bring efficiencies to their business. Prior to joining ProShip, Clint held various roles at UPS, lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma with his wife and 3 children. Today, though, we're going to be talking about peak season, specifically 2020 peak season. But to start off with, we're going to look at the past. We're going to look at the peak season of 2013. Clint, could you go ahead and start describing some of what you saw working for UPS during 2013 and how it might apply to today?
Yeah, absolutely, Justin. I remember the peak 2013 season very vividly, and remember a lot of the things that taught us about peak season. It was kind of a debacle. It made a lot of news headlines back in those days, if you remember. And if you don't remember, maybe you're new to the industry. I haven't been around since the peak 2013. Just kind of explain what happened. Peak 2013 was unique. It had a lot of unique challenges and causes. I mean, to start off with, it was a very short holiday shipping season, holiday shopping season.
And Clint, what is the usual shopping season consist of? How long is it for most years?
Yeah, well, I guess a lot of people don't think about how, depending on where Thanksgiving falls on the calendar in November, there could be anywhere from 26 to 32 days between Thanksgiving and Christmas. So 2013 was one of those short years, only 26 days, which greatly compresses the time frame that shippers and shoppers have to get stuff done during really the hottest shopping season of the year. Quite a difference there in terms of time, right? If you're looking at 26 as opposed to 32 days to get stuff done. So it was a compressed holiday season to start off with. The calendar was against everybody. There was a surge in e-commerce volume in 2013. Double-digit growth year over year, which ordinarily would not cause such a lot of problem, except that surge happened a lot towards the end of the season. So as the calendar was progressing closer to Christmas, a lot of jump in the growth of e-commerce volume, which was causing a lot of parcel volume out there that the carriers had to handle. And then on top of all that, you had weather events. You had winter storms. You had a big winter storm in the Midwest, shut down UPS's major air hub there in Louisville, they call Worldport. It was shut down for several days. Packages were not moving. I remember also kind of close to us here, where we were working at the time, we were seeing ice storm in Dallas that was causing a lot of problems in that major metro area. Things like that were really causing a logjam in the supply chain during peak 2013. And I think that one of the other things, if you want to talk about like lessons learned from 2013, is that somehow we as consumers have kind of been mystified by the technology that we have at our fingertips, by the efficiency of the supply chain, and we kind of get lulled into thinking that we can order anything anytime we want, and it will just magically appear when we want it to. Like you're sitting in your dentist's office in the waiting room, December 21st, and it occurs to you, oh wait, I forgot to get a Christmas gift for my brother. So you pull out your smart device, you go to a website, order something, and expect it to just magically appear.
Yeah,
before
in
December 25th.
2013, on this one, I do remember that was when people were really looking for as fast a shipping as possible. So as you're advancing the slide here, let's go ahead and can you tell us any more about what the result was for a lot of customers at that point in time?
Yeah, well, at the time I was working, as you mentioned, during the bios, I was working for UPS, and it's customary during peak shipping season for all UPS employees to help out in the operation. And I was working in they call it the customer counter, right there at the retail center of the UPS hub, helping customers find their packages, sometimes delivering bad news about how they're not going to get there in the expected time frame. And so I saw a lot of that disappointment in consumers firsthand. And there's a lot of headlines, right, that came out after that about how the carriers, quote unquote, ruined Christmas or ruined the holiday shipping season, which, in retrospect, in perspective, it's really a overblown reaction. Let's not forget what's most important, right? Especially this year. But still, nonetheless, there are a lot of disappointed consumers who didn't get their gifts when they expected. There's been a lot of things happen since that peak 2013 season. The carriers have made adjustments. They've implemented better planning. They've invested more in infrastructure. I think a lot of the things that we're seeing right now in terms of how the carriers are working more closely with some of their largest accounts, even in this pandemic peak, is a direct result of what happened in 2013 and an attempt to try to keep that from happening again. And the other thing that really changed the market and changed the way that e-commerce and shipping is happening right now, that's a major development, is it was really that 2013 peak and some of the consumer disappointment that led to Amazon starting their own shipping service. Now pretty much wherever you are, you see the blue Amazon trucks driving around, and they've developed their own delivery capability. Not to say they wouldn't have done that eventually anyway, but the 2013 peak season and their reaction to that led directly to them creating their own delivery network, which has tremendous implications for logistics and parcel delivery and e-commerce.
Yeah, I do remember. I remember in 2014, as we were doing peak season reviews with a lot of our customers, the carriers were coming to the tables with new plans. But also a lot of our customers at that point in time was the first time they ever started looking at regionals, and many of them increased the amount of United States Post Office that they were using as well. So I think not just the carriers, but the industry as a whole really changed back in 2013 because of the increase in customers wanting to do e-commerce for their Christmas shopping.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So
let's I think that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that as we think about where we are right now in this peak 2020 that we're going into, the pandemic peak, we've already had tremendous challenges this year in the supply chain. The thought that keeps coming back to me is that the 2020 peak has a lot of potential to be like the 2013 peak.
Yeah, and let's go ahead and let's transition to the 2020 peak and start. Well, let's call out the elephant in the room. The biggest challenge here has got to be the pandemic itself, wouldn't you say, Clint?
Yeah, absolutely. Already this year, we've seen what you would call peak-like volumes out there that the carriers are handling. Just looking at some stats here, as you compare Q2 2020 year over year against Q2 2019, growth in e-commerce, according to U.S. Department of Commerce, has been about 44%. So it's a 44% year over year jump in e-commerce just in the middle of the year. We're not talking about peak yet. We're just talking about what happened over the spring and over the summer. And so, the carriers, of course, are dealing with that. Huge increases for UPS, for FedEx, for the post office, and they've already, as we've seen, they've already struggled with that increase in demand and being able to deliver in a timely manner.
Well, Clint, if we haven't even hit the true peak season that we expect every year, what are we expecting for Black Friday and Cyber Monday this year?
Well, I think it's obvious that we're going to see a huge spike, a huge increase in holiday e-commerce shipping. There's so much right now about the 2020 holiday shopping season that is unknown. One thing that is known is that e-commerce has grown and will grow and will continue to spike. But also, the smart retailers, they're already rethinking those events like Black Friday, like Cyber Monday. For what I know we're seeing, both in terms of the customers we're talking with, as well as the headlines, a lot of the major retailers are moving forward their efforts to reach consumers. They're moving their big sales forward into October. I mean, honestly, you want to talk about peak holiday shipping season, rather than looking forward to what's going to happen on Black Friday, Cyber Monday. Really, we're in it. We're going into it right now, which is really a good thing. I mean, it elongates the season for getting things done. This year we're already dealing with a somewhat shorter window. I mentioned that you've got anywhere between 26 and 32 days between Thanksgiving and Christmas. This year, we've got 28. So not the longest period possible, but not the shortest either. But as these retailers are moving some of their big promotions into October, maybe into early November, it's going to give people more of an opportunity to make their purchases early, which is going to relieve some of the congestion out there in the carrier networks. It also potentially and hopefully will relieve some of the congestion in the stores. You avoid some of the large crowds, people pushing to get in the front door for those doorbusters. Rather, it's going to be, I believe, more spread out throughout October, November, December.
I'm sure that the peak season fees that are coming from the carriers are encouraging that as well, since this year we know UPS has pinned those peak season fees to what you were shipping in February of this year, which those of you that remember, that was before any lockdowns happened or anything like that. We were in quote unquote normal buying stance, where just 32% of consumers made their purchases online versus 58% at this point in time. So there's probably a lot of flexibility that's going to be needed, isn't there, Clint?
Yeah, I think flexibility is the key. As we get closer towards the real peak of the peak, if we can say that, we're getting a better picture of what's going to happen out there. But still, there are a lot of unknowns. We really don't know what's happening, month by month with the pandemic. We could see a dramatic drop in new cases of COVID-19. We could see great progress being made on a vaccine, or we could see maybe just steady number of cases, kind of status quo as to where things sit today. Work on a vaccine being done, but still no real clear timeline on when it's going to be available. Or we could see things happen, a very negative scenario where we see a dramatic increase in new cases. I know already some areas of the country are rethinking their we call it lockdown, and starting to reinstitute some of those lockdown measures that they had implemented, the stay-at-home, safer-at-home type measures. And so when we really start getting into November, December, not really sure what things are going to look like. And I think that, like you mentioned, flexibility is going to be very important, because depending on what scenario plays out, shippers, retailers, e-tailers are going to have to be able to react very quickly maybe even on a moment's notice in terms of their strategy for reaching their consumers and how they manage their supply chain and their operations in order to effectively and safely get their goods into consumer hands.
How do you think they can react? Just a question here. So we know again about the volume caps and the carrier surcharges, and well, that there are going to be plenty of webinars out there about what those are and how they affect you. But do you have any indication as to how a company, how a retailer might be able to react during this peak season?
Sure, and I think how they react, again, depends on those various scenarios that play out. I mean, if we see some of the best possible outcomes in terms of the pandemic, you'll probably see more of, the traditional peak season. There's going to be some variability, I expect, due to maybe some of the pent-up demand that's out there. You also have economic factors going on. There's higher unemployment. You've got new consumer habits. So there's going to be some change regardless of what happens. But even in the best case scenario, retailers will have to adapt with probably more of a traditional style technology and operations plan to meet those customer expectations for speedy and low cost delivery through some of their traditional fulfillment sources, distribution centers, retail storefronts with in-store foot traffic. I mean, let's not forget, e-commerce, as powerful as it is and as explosive as the growth has been, is still less than about 15% of all retail sales in the US. So in-store sales are still a major part of retailers' revenue streams. But if you see, again, kind of status quo, steady number of new cases, you see some more cautious continuation of in-person economic activity, you see the social distancing, you see some of the throttling of store traffic. I think what you're going to see is a lot of things like BOPUS, buy online, pick up in store. You're going to see a lot of that curbside pickup, curbside delivery. You're going to have weaker traffic in your brick and mortar stores. There's going to be more e-commerce sales, which is a lot of what we've been seeing. And I think there where retailers will need to be flexible is in putting together really an omni-channel sales capability that's strong in all areas. Good, strong, traditional in-store promotions that are executed safely, but also an emphasis on those, a traditional means of picking up goods like the BOPUS or shipping directly to consumer. And of course, if things really start going downhill and we start seeing the lockdowns, we start seeing a lot of the governmental mandates to stay at home. Again, it's going to go back to March, April in terms of e-commerce being so strong and there being so much e-commerce and activity shipping out there. I mean, there's going to be almost, there's going to be very slow retail traffic, let's say, just non-essential retail traffic will slow down. It's going to be supplemented by huge surge in e-commerce. And that's where retailers will have to go full on omni-channel with their ability to ship from all of their inventory sources, from their distribution center, from their third-party logistics providers, where possible from their stores, shipping directly from store. I could see would be a really important thing to be able to turn on very quickly. And just the ability to pivot between their carrier partners and to do that as needed so that they can continue peak operations and drive strong sales growth this year.
Yeah, as we talk about those carrier partners, one of the more popular carrier partners that you're seeing in the news today is the United States Post Office. It's been a very hot topic. What can you add to that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the post office is vital. It's vital not only for delivery of mail and things of that nature, but for e-tailers, it's vital because it provides a nice a low-cost delivery option, not only in terms of direct USPS services, priority mail and things of that nature, but also the last mile delivery services that are offered by the other major carriers. So your UPS, SurePost, your FedEx, SmartPost, important part of the delivery chain. And yeah, there's a lot of concern about the USPS this year, funding, how well things are going for them. And don't forget also another thing that's impacted all carriers is the pandemic itself. Again, like we said, you've got more people who are taking off sick. They have to implement additional safety measures in the hubs. And I'll go ahead and mention here also, it'd be really interesting to see how the carriers staff up for peak. Generally, during peak, they bring on thousands and thousands of temporary workers and put them all at play in the peak operation. And how that's done this year will be really interesting. See how that's done safely and done effectively and efficiently. But the USPS is no exception there. And already they're in the news, right, because of the political situation, the upcoming election, potential for mail-in ballots and things like that to be additional burden that the USPS carriers this year. So I know we've done some writing, we've posted some things about the USPS, looking not only at peak but even beyond in terms of their viability, and that's got a lot of shippers concerned.
I will say we've got some good news. One of our partners, Boaz, who does a lot of tracking of data of the United States Post Office, is showing that delivery times, which of course in many cases for the United States Post Office are not guaranteed, delivery times have gone back due to the number of hires, the machines have been put in place, things of that nature. Delivery times for the United States Post Office are nearly back to pre-COVID times. So really, I think what we have to look at the fact is how much more volume is actually going to go through the United States Post Office during this time. And let's not forget, this is their first year with a peak season surcharge as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a historic year in terms of the surcharges. This is the first year that all three major national parcel players have had a peak season surcharge. So, I mean, to that end, Justin, why don't you talk to us a little bit about the peak season surcharges? What are they? What do they mean? What have we seen in terms of strategies our customers have done to mitigate those?
Well, I'm not going to go into all the surcharges because I'm going to tell you that we've got a webinar coming up, which is just on UPS surcharges alone, and that's probably going to take a full half hour. And of course, we don't want to take that time up on a podcast like this. But what I will say is it's important that your execution software, whether it's your multi-carrier shipping software, whether it's something that's integrated into your WMS or your point of sale, needs to be able to look at all the data, needs to look at the delivery times, know what the customer expectation is. It needs to look at the actual cost of that shipment. And of course, that shipment cost may change 1 month to the next when peak season surcharges are on versus when they're off, right? Now, at ProShip, we of course offer things like advanced date shopping, and at lower levels, time and transit shopping and rate shopping. But really, if you're going to be truly flexible and you want each parcel to be weighed, measured, and evaluated based upon its unique origin destination and all of the charges that are affect that particular package versus the next package, which might be smaller, might be going to a different destination, and whose customer may have a different expectation, well, you're going to want to make sure that multi-carrier shipping software is actually capable of doing that.
Yeah, great point. You want to be in that position to be able to change your carrier mix if necessary, overall, or even on a transaction by transaction basis, given the additional expense that it could be hit with this year.
Exactly. Well, of course, the other thing we've seen this year, and at least for anybody living on the eastern portion of the United States to the southern portion of the United States is the sheer amount of weather that has been happening. We're already into the Greek alphabet on named storms, with another one just about to barrel up the Mississippi and run right through the heart of all the carriers' various central hubs. That should be interesting. So, and we have no idea how that's going to change when the weather changes from warm to cold. And as you mentioned back in 2013, ice storms and inclement weather have affected things. So being able to make those rapid changes are important. But I think now is a good time for us to move into well, what about next year? If I've got what I've got today, so what about planning for 2021? What can we do? And let's advance the slide on that as well. All right. So the first thing we're going to say is, well, obviously these challenges aren't going to go away. Clearly, we're seeing a massive increase in the amount of customers that have started using e-commerce for their shopping. Many of those customers are going to stick. So even after the pandemic is over and we have a valid vaccine or something of that nature, something allows us to go back to what will be the new business as usual, you're still going to have a lot of changes that you want to make sure that you put into place. You're going to want to evaluate what's been done, what went right, most importantly, but also what went wrong during your 2020 peak season. How can you do better? Work with your vendors, maybe switch your vendors in order to assure that these things occur. Clint, did you have more things to add to planning for 2021?
No, I think you hit it right on the head. Just because we turn the calendar over to another year doesn't mean that all these challenges are going to go away. Doesn't mean all the opportunities are going to go away. I saw one source that expects 160% expected future increase in e-commerce purchases from what you would call new or low frequency e-commerce users.
Yeah, that was from Accenture.
Yeah, no, it's a great stat, and it speaks to the new users of e-commerce, that new consumer base, those who were reluctant to adopt it before and have kind of been forced to. But also, as more and more consumers connect with more and more e-tailers, they're getting signed up for their promotional coupons and notices and things. I know recently I've signed up for accounts with a couple of e-commerce vendors, and as soon as you make your first order, you're starting to get bombarded with save 30% on your next order, or here's our latest sale. So that's going to continue to drive e-commerce volume into 2021. Costs aren't going down, consumer expectations are not going down, and we are ramping up for the challenges that we're going to face in 2020 is very important. But I think we need to keep that mentality going into 2021 and to start thinking long-term about how we can all get better at delivering on customer expectations and improving the way that we execute parcel shipments.
Agreed. And what I'm going to tell any shipper out there, whether you're a manufacturer, a retailer, a 3PL, a fulfillment house, what you really want to look at is the best time to start making changes for your system for the next peak season is almost as soon as the year rolls over. At least for ProShip, we see a large number of peak season planning meetings in February and March, right? So that is what we're going to do to change for the year to make sure we've got enough time to put all the systems in place. It probably changes to from the e-commerce suite through the ERP down to the WMSs and point of sales, all the way through to the shipping software. And in the cases of warehouses, often that's when they're going to change out equipment as well. So all of that, especially if you got a huge amount of components to change, the earlier in the year you get that, the better, especially if you can get that before one of your normal peaks, right? So maybe Valentine's Day is a peak for you, or maybe the beginning of spring is the beginning of summer is a peak season for you. There's a little bump there, or Mother's Day or Father's Day or something of that nature. Look for those times to have as much of your changes in place so you can test them. You can make sure that they're going to handle that extra load. Now, if things keep going the way they are, well, we're not going to see a huge drop off like we would expect, but we're still going to want to go through that process in order to allow all of your enterprise software stack to have the changes necessary, along with the physical changes you may need, in order to provide that better service at a lower cost, in order to increase profits and, well, allow that advertising so Clint can get more emails.
Absolutely.
All right. So let's go ahead and let's move towards our conclusion here. So I think we all agree that this is probably going to be one of the most challenging peak seasons of the year. Wouldn't you say, Clint?
Yeah, I think it is. And, going back to how we opened here, we all want to work towards avoiding another fiasco like we had several years ago in 2013, and doing the best we can. I will not be surprised if we do see some similar frustrations and problems as we did, but I think knowing and learning from lessons of the past going into this peak season will help us to be better prepared.
Yeah, and of course, we're just going to have to, companies are just going to have to stay as flexible as possible, stay as close to their vendors as possible to allow that flexibility. And of course, one of the best things you could probably do is put a process in place right now to log everything that you're changing, to log things that are going right, to log things that are going wrong. So once we get to the other side of this and you're sitting there in early January and trying to remember what happened and what you want to start planning for, so you can get your vendors involved in February or March, having that planning in place to document that is probably really important. Clint, do you have any last words for our listeners?
No, I would just say this is a year where we know that there are challenges. There are things that we don't know yet, but there are things that we definitely know, and there are things that we can plan for. We know there's going to be a surge in e-commerce volume. We know that we have a bit of a shorter window this year for shipping and shopping between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We know there are carrier surcharges in place. We know that the carriers have implemented some volume caps for some of their accounts, that they've struggled to deliver on time in many cases. Those are all things that we can plan for. And there are things that we can't plan for. We don't know what's going to happen with the weather. We don't really know what's going to happen with the virus and government reactions to that. But it's on us. We have the ability, knowing what we know now, to plan for that. And then the other stuff, like we said, to stay flexible and to stay agile and to be able to switch from one mode of connecting with our consumers to the next. And so I think that those are going to be the keys to executing successful peak season this year.
Excellent, Clint. Thank you for joining me. And for those of you who are listening, please feel free to join us next month when on our next podcast will be about LaserShip. We'll be diving into shipping speed, regional carriers, and the customer experience. If you've got questions, please contact us at sales@proshipinc.com or call us at 800-353-7774. That's 800-353-7774. Thank you all, and goodbye.